Alright, we really need to talk about the recent H3 content nuke because he may have just made one of the largest moves in recent YouTube history. Now, there's going to be a couple of people that are going to come into this saying, Ethan absolutely won! Ethan absolutely destroyed those broads! Yeah, but at what cost? Let's talk about it. So first things first, what exactly is Ethan Klein presenting in his video? To not utilize too much of his content and just summarize the beginning and a little bit of what his motivations are, essentially per his own words, he has set a super high standard for his pursuits and found evidence to meet those standards of 3 egregious individuals utilizing his content to create a market replacement. He used arguments specifically aiming to target Denims, Frogan, and a streamer known as Caseytron for infringing upon his intellectual property. He provided evidence to suggest that these 3 individuals intentionally rebroadcasted his video for the purpose of depriving him of monetary gain or attention, and instead utilized his content for their benefit of monetary gain and attention. So, what does this mean? In simple terms, if Ethan's case is strong, which a lot of people are suspecting it to be, considering he registered his content to the Library of Congress, he is not only entitled to a DMCA takedown, as would typically be the case in a situation like this, but is also within his right to sue for statutory damages. At a surface level, this may seem like a huge Ethan Klein win, and it probably is, at least within his crusade to shut down bad faith, sometimes even malicious actors such as Snark, which he pointed out was also actively participating in facilitating the creation of market replacement venues. But what does this mean for the wider creator sphere? Well, just to give you the answer quickly, at least per my opinion, it's unlikely that this will really lead into anything major in the future, but I do sort of want to share this discussion with you guys. So one of the more speculatory concerns that is being talked about right now is, will this move from Ethan Klein embolden would-be DMCA system abusers to go after creators who use their content to potentially silence critique or strong-arm people into silence? In my honest opinion, that potential, that inspiration, that emboldenment, yes, it can always be there. The idea might be in more people's heads now, but will the rate of these malicious actors increase is the question. In my honest opinion, who knows? But I do want to share this tweet from DSP of all people with you guys. DSP says, there are entire channels making bank by stealing/live rebroadcasting my content without making it transformative. They outright ask for contributions to do so. If this lawsuit goes through, I am going to be rich, and many are going to be in trouble. This is only a small and silly example, but let's be real. DSP is DSP. He'd probably spend most of his money on WWE champions than go out of his way to pursue damages. Not to mention, to even go to this scale that Ethan Klein boasts about in his video, he'd have to register most of his content that is quote-unquote rebroadcasted or infringed upon with the Library of Congress the same way Ethan has done to various of his works. I highly doubt DSP would go through with any of this to get rich, given he's too lazy to do anything in general. I would also like to share this absolutely idiotic example showcasing one of the biggest dumb on the internet.
And Denim's the queen.
Yeah! Oh, dude. Hey, yo, Ethan. On everything. If you somehow see this, if you get me in contact with your lawyers, bro, I'll do it too. Hit me up. Finding lawyers that'll do this is the hardest part. If you got lawyers, I will do that too. Hit my ass up, bro, please.
Of self-owning. And my God, is she the queen of that?
It's very obvious from...
I don't really know what Tectone hopes to accomplish here, really. What is he going to do? Sue content creators criticizing his behavior over the past few years by proactively registering his content with the Library of Congress? It's not like he's a video essayist or creates long-form structured videos like Ethan did with his content. Who's he going to sue? Clippers? Video essayists creating transformative content? Denims herself for responding and criticizing Tectone in a live format? Say what you will about Denims, but in the cases I've seen Denims talk about Tectone, I don't think she has ever expressly created a market replacement for his content or infringed on his intellectual property, let alone one that would make him eligible for statutory damages. In cases where Denims has watched anything related to Tectone, based on my prior coverage of both individuals, it has mostly been critical, although biased coverage which is perfectly within fair use. What's he gonna do next? Sue me for using this clip? And this is just the surface level, but I do want to bring up some concerns that other creators have as well, as I think a lot of these concerns are perfectly reasonable when talking about the YouTube sphere in general. Leon Lush made this tweet. It's ironic that one of the major stepping stones in Ethan's early career was him winning the fair use lawsuit against Matt Haas after the internet largely rallied around him in an effort that ultimately set important precedent to protect creators from copyright abuse. You could argue, what a lot of streamers do today, watchable pieces of content with little added value, is not fair use. But either way, this feels petty and pathetic as a tactic to silence his detractors, which, in my personal opinion, I somewhat agree with. I've been following Ethan Klein for quite a long time. I've given him a defense when I thought it was due, but this feels oddly targeted, at least in my opinion. He might be one of the pettiest people on YouTube, so not altogether unexpected, I guess. If the streamers he was suing didn't suck so bad, I considered donating to the defense, but I'll just have to let this one play out from the sideline. I want to take a moment here to add my own thoughts from a previous live stream.
I just want to make it clear that they all met this very specific high bar of criteria that I set forth.
Yeah, yes, for himself specifically, to be clear, I think he's well within his right to be doing this. As an individual, as a business, as a brand, legally speaking, he is absolutely, at least at first glance, me not being that educated on the law, I think he's well within his right. However, as a precedent for the larger YouTube culture, for the larger content creation culture, this seems heavy-handed as a standard to set for content creators. I think, regardless of content, I mean, this is entirely my personal feelings, right? I think, regardless of how you react or the content that you're reacting to, and I don't mean this in the way of theft, I think people should be able to react to content whichever way it is that they can react to it. Sometimes people will be incredibly silent. Sometimes people won't add a lot of commentary. Other people will just be like, hey, I don't really care about this, but I'll hear what he has to say anyways. Right? There's going to be a lot of different people that go about reacting to content in separate ways. I try to add as much commentary as I can for every minute of the video that's available because of concerns like these. I think it sort of sets like an idea that, no, you now have to abide by these standards of creating significantly more engaging content, which I don't have a problem with, but I wouldn't want to essentially like set a precedent for everybody to be that way. I think people should have the freedom to like go about things whichever way they want, as long as they don't actively try to create a market replacement for the content that they're essentially ripping. Because I will absolutely like stand on the idea that doing lazy reactions is almost close to theft, if not just unethical. I don't think they should be like scared or essentially pressured into adjusting how it is that they go about content creation. I'm not gonna like utilize this as a legitimate claim, but more so as like a thought experiment. And I might be overreacting here. But what about other individuals that'll take a look at something like this and be like, well, what if I start applying like stricter licensing on my content? And I'm speaking out of my ass right now to be expressly clear. What if I decide to also submit my content with Congress so that I can like start suing people over it? And then I start suing everybody and start raking in millions of dollars for lazy reactions that I could easily classify as like market replacements. What about bad faith actors that could utilize Ethan Klein's plot here or plan to specifically go after egregious individuals to then target anybody they deem sufficiently lazy and start going after them? It's a possibility that I'm not fully prepared to like, you know, lean on. But it is a possibility. There is another criticism to be made here that I am inclined to believe a bit more. Some people would largely disagree, but to me, it's somewhat evident that Ethan Klein is being incredibly vindictive and petty, and going after these people out of spite rather than a genuine concern for his intellectual property. To me, that sort of rubs me the wrong way. I've come to bat for Ethan Klein plenty of times in the past, and I've done a significant amount of coverage calling out Snark for being incredibly bad faith and spreading narratives that unfairly misrepresent and harm Ethan. I've covered other detractors and heavily scrutinized them as well for being dishonest, for being malicious, but this feels very motivated in a way that just doesn't sit right with me. While I may agree with Ethan's right to protect his intellectual property, and while I do think it is obviously very wrong for these people to essentially attempt to thieve from Ethan Klein, I do think that this is meant to be specifically harmful to some of his political enemies. Not just because of their disagreements, but because of something more personal. That's not to say that it's because they're women or because of their class or anything like that. It's more so to say that Ethan Klein is petty and vindictive enough to launch an all-out attack like this. I know that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but I stand by it as someone who has criticized Denims, Frogan, and all of these individuals for recklessly platforming malicious individuals such as snarkers and promoters of conspiracy theories that only serve to encourage bad faith But anyways, that's all I got for today. Feel free to leave a dislike if you disagree with me. I know this video isn't going to be that popular with everybody who's following this story or following Ethan Klein closely, but that's besides the point. I'm not here to really appeal to anybody or any specific opinion. Thank you.